Thanks to my local Cineworld, I got to check out Dumb Money a couple of days before its general release here in the UK. And going into this, I was definitely intrigued for the movie, and walking out of the movie, I can see I had a good time, but it's not as memorable as some true stories that I've seen before. So let's get into it. Hey everyone, what's going on? Welcome to the channel and thank you so much for taking your own time out to check out this movie review, which is spoiler free, of the movie Dumb Money, directed by Craig Gillespie, who's previously directed the likes of Cruella and I, Tonya, and starring Shailene Woodley, Paul Dano, Seth Rogen, and many, many more. The story of Dumb Money tells the kind of wild true story of everyday people fighting against Wall Street and backing GameStop. I'd like to give a huge thank you to all my awesome patrons who help to really support the channel. If you want to join Patreon, shop merch, buy a copy of my debut book, you can find a link to that down below in the description box. And also, if you want to request a movie for me to watch, I do have a link to my PayPal where you can request this to be watched as a short and reviewed with a shout out, or you can request a long form review with a shout out, also link down below in the description box. I'll be honest, I remember the kind of GameStop movement. I didn't read everything into it. I don't have Reddit. I kind of just watched it on kind of the stock market as such. And I will say that I dabbled a little bit into it. I didn't make anything big, like maybe like £10-15 or so. So yeah, not much at all. But it was really cool just to see that kind of, you know, how this movie plays out. Overall, what I will say, starting off with the positives right away, is that the acting across the board is really well done. I would say that everyone does a good job in the movie. I would say that the performance is all around good. No one didn't give a bad performance, and I felt like the acting was portrayed in a good way for the kind of time given. Also, the movie is well shot in terms of the cinematography. It's nice to look at. Also, this being kind of like an underdog story, and if you do know the general true story of this, yeah, it's definitely an underdog story about kind of everyday people, and I think that is kind of like just a message that can kind of be relayed with anyone, and I think that a lot of people can pick up on that messaging. Also, I will say that there is some good moments of comedy that I did get a couple of chuckles, and so did the rest of the audience that I was with tonight. There wasn't a lot, but there was certainly some moments, and I've definitely got to praise in terms of chuckles Pete Davidson. He is the one who pretty much supplies most of the comedy, and especially in the third act, I would definitely say that is where the movie is probably the funniest in terms of the humour that it's providing. Unfortunately, where this movie dips for me in terms of not being so memorable, that it's going to be one I want to rush back and see, and this may just be me, but I feel like this movie is widely undeveloped. What I mean by that is this is less than a 2-hour movie, and it focuses on about 5 or 6 different kind of story arcs in the one big narrative that it's trying to tell, but we don't get enough time with each individual characters and their stories to really care. They give you kind of like bare minimum. Some of them in terms of like family dynamics, you might see like a scene or two. One or two of them in terms of a backstory as to maybe how they got in the financial position that they're in. You get like one line of dialogue to explain that, and I just feel like that is absolutely lazy. Yes, it's cool to see how many people's different lives were changed by this movement, but at the same time, because of how short this movie is, you don't get given enough time to really care about these characters to the point where you really want to root for them, you feel like uplifted, you want to like cheer as the movie is kind of coming to its climax. You really don't get that. You feel let down, you know, and it's just such a shame, because I feel as if this movie is well casted, but they're trying to just throw like, oh, this is this one storyline about someone who works in GameStop, this is a person who works in everyday kind of like nursing, then here's another story arc about a guy doing like pizza deliveries and DoorDash and, you know, that kind of thing. And I feel like it's just trying to throw like multiple pies into one big batch to make like some kind of like super pie and that's maybe a weird explanation, and unfortunately because it crams all that in, it loses that kind of like sweet kind of charismatic charm that it should really have and ultimately delivered by the time the movie wraps up. By the time it does wrap up, once again, this movie does something very similar to every other true story, and I know this is inspired by a true story, but I don't know how much of it is exactly true to 100% off the tee, and I just feel as if this is maybe a story that's kind of been told a little bit too soon, because there's a couple of times in here where you're seeing like kind of like TikToks and memes, and I know that is kind of all inspired with this movie, and especially as it was centered, especially around the peak of COVID. But I just feel like if you look back on this movie a little bit later in time, it's possibly going to come off as really cringy, and I certainly was. Might be because I'm not really a huge fan of TikTok and kind of memes and stuff, or at least certain ones and like different edits and stuff, but maybe if you guys like that, maybe you'll enjoy that element more. So my overall score for Dumb Money is a 3 out of 5. But now that I've voiced my opinion, I want to hear from the most important opinion of all, and that is you guys. I want to know what you guys think of this movie. Are you excited to see it? Are you going to check it out? Is it going to be a one that you're going to skip? Well, leave any and all comments down below so we can continue the discussion down there. And until the next time, guys, I will see you in the next video.